Everyone, so this is my reflection on my Poetry in Place podcast. I would have to say that out of all of our projects, this one is my second favorite. I really enjoyed the freedom we had in deciding what we wanted to talk about. So the description for the project was that we had to identify a location or within 4 blocks of campus that could be used. It was somewhat ambiguous, as it says here, and abstract, but then you had to identify a poem that resonates with that place. And once you've done that, then you should feel free to go ahead and talk about whatever you want in relation to that place. And then you compose an audio piece that contains the poem and a narration that brings that poem to life. Professor Anderson wrote on the project and doing the project. So how did I decide? Well, the first thing I had to do was I started with the place. So I wanted to steer clear of any popular UNC sites such as the Old Well or the Bell Tower, because I thought they would probably be used by other people in the class and I didn't want to be repetitive. I also tried to keep in mind the whole time doing this project that potential new students at UNC would be the ones listening to our podcast, so I didn't want them to just get the same old Well Bell Tower experience. I wanted to kind of show them something new, but I also didn't want it to be obscure enough that it would be hard to find. The place I actually decided on then was this place. Let me pull it up real quick. Was the UNC FedEx Global Center Outdoor Garden. Not a lot of people know that this place exists on campus, which I find to be kind of nice. I remember discovering this little garden my first year, and I felt like I had discovered a secret. I would go up there when I felt really, really overwhelmed, and it always helped me clear my head. And I really wanted to give potential UNC students or actual first years, or anybody really who listens to the podcast, I wanted to give them a feel for the undiscovered too. We go to a university with upwards of 30,000 people. Why not show them something that's a little bit harder to find, that not everyone knows about? So now the actual poem. So the poem that I picked was Afternoon on a Hill by Edna St. Vincent Millay. So my audio draft looked something like this.
Myself, all give me a sense of fulfillment. Even when I struggle and I feel as if I am failing, I recognize that those feelings are perfectly normal. Now, as I spend my own afternoon on this hill, surrounded by nature and surrounded by the town that I love, a city that has been able to test me in every way so far, I know what will be mine. And no matter how many times it takes me, I will strike down. But even better, I will rise up. And so will you. Thank you for listening.
So yeah, that was my first draft. You can see the different audios that are in it. A lot of these are my built-in sound effects. Basically, my steps for the draft, both the draft and the final, they look something like this. So at first, the first thing I did was I wrote the podcast. You can see it here. There's me, and this is all the stuff I was going to say. So then, after the written part was done, I recorded my voice using this program, Audacity. You can see it just I kind of went out here, here it is.
Which must be mine, and then start down. I want to tell you a story.
So once I recorded my voice, I went into this really cool website that Professor Anderson showed us called freesound.org, and I basically found the sound I wanted. And then once I had the sounds in there, basically, I just would play the podcast through. The only thing I did decide to take out is in my like podcast, my draft one, I had this sad kind of like do 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 playing. As I really enjoyed this project. It was a ton of fun. It was a great like introduction project to our class. We worked on it first. I got to learn about Audacity, which I really enjoyed. Even though my final project didn't save well at the end, I found it like to be a really easy software to work with. I also really enjoyed using freesound.org. I really thought it was fun finding all my sound effects. It was like a game of treasure hunt to find the best sound effect possible for my podcast. I also really enjoyed picking out a poem and tell a story based off that poem. I really like that concept and that idea because I love poetry. And even just the idea of a moving podcast and the idea of the Geo Tour was really, really cool. And ultimately, like, I want to be an English teacher, as I've told Professor Anderson before, and I could really see using something very similar, such as like create your own podcast in the Geo Tour in my own classroom one day. So I really enjoyed this too as an educational tool. So yeah, this is my final reflection on my Poetry in Place podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.